If you've ever been given advice by an older person and felt like it was extremely outdated, you're not alone. And it's not the fault of the person giving the advice. It is the fault of these institutions that have collapsed in a break of trust that people our age or people your age have had with the way that things are supposed to work or the way that they were told they were going to work. You were told, go to school, get a degree, get a job that pays for the degree, get married, have kids, buy a house, do all these things that to you feel impossible. How is your life ever going to get there when things are going the way that they're going? And you're not wrong to feel this way. You, in some sense, have been lied to, not out of malice by any of the people who told you that this is the way to do life, but because that was their experience, but it's not turning out to be your experience. So what does that mean, and do I even have the answers? Honestly, I don't have the answers to what you should do with your life. I think it is very different at this point for everybody. I think incentives have been completely screwed up. I think that they have been completely shaken and turned into something where it's really hard to both do what you want to do what you'd love to do, and do the right thing, and go make enough money to buy the house, to get married, to have kids. And that makes it very, very difficult to figure out a broad piece of advice that would work for everybody. And the only broad piece of advice that I can think of that truly will work for everybody is to lean on your faith. Lean on your faith so that when everything else in the world crumbles, the one thing that never changes, which is God, stays firm. I personally built my dreams as an artist on, in some senses, getting the approval of a really large industry, getting awards, getting recognition on the level of getting, a song in a chart or a movie on a chart. And that has crumbled, to be honest with you, with everything that's come out. The institutions that I used to trust that would be there to pat me on the back are people I don't want anywhere near me in some cases. And so if I built my whole life and my goals and my dreams on the backs of those institutions, on the pedestals of those institutions, right now it would feel like my life is absolutely crumbling. And in some ways it does, because a big part of me did want to create art on a level that would get recognition. And now that recognition is vain to me because of what I'm seeing happen to the institutions that hand out the recognition. But the reason it's not reality breaking to the point of crippling myself is because none of my identity was ever in my goals or dreams. My identity is in Christ. Now you might hear people who leave the church because of something that their church did. Or you might hear people that don't believe in God anymore because of their experience at church. And you might be one of those people. And I've always encouraged those people to look at God, who He says He is, how He demonstrates who He is, and to judge God based off of His own actions, not people claiming to be working in the name of God. Because people at the end of the day are people. And He will use some people very, very clearly that are using His name properly, and then there will be other people who use His name in vain and hurt a lot of people. So trusting God based on a person that could be, doing it faithfully, or a person who is doing it unfaithfully, is not a good reflection of who God actually is. And I would say the same thing for these institutions. Not the institutions themselves, but what they stand for. So for me, just because I've seen the institutions that have held up what art is and what art is good and which ones get awards absolutely crumble to the bottom and mean nothing to me anymore, that doesn't mean that art itself crumbled or means nothing to me anymore. Art itself has a potential to be inherently good, has a potential to share truth, has a potential to touch people's lives. And it could be the same thing for education. Just because our education system has crumbled, it doesn't mean that the actual act of education and the actual act of knowledge learning and the actual act of applying what you've learned to discover new things and research is necessarily a bad thing. In fact, that is always going to be a good thing. Don't attach the thing behind the system to the system itself. Systems come and go. The things behind it stay. And the number one thing that stays and has created everything else is God. And we know Him through His Son, Jesus Christ. And so my advice to anybody, based on my own experience, is if the world is crumbling around you, there is one thing you need to place your identity in to feel steady and firm while the world crumbles, and that is Jesus Christ.